Okay, I understand the idea that the larger part of me is source energy. And you were just talking about this a little bit, and there's no separation. So this other part of me that's larger.
True, now hang on to that just for a minute, because you've brought us to a really good new place. So when we talk about the larger part of you, and then you say, and I understand that there need be no separation between this larger part of me, then maybe it's time for all of us to leave behind the words the larger part and the physical part. Let's just call it all you.
Okay.
In other words, won't that be nice when you are so in sync with who you really are that you're just you walking around, source energy in a physical body, just walking around living happily ever after? That's what you planned.
Yeah. This may be hard to explain. This we call it right now, I'm saying it's a larger part of me, is a vibrational energy. And it's larger than I am.
It's a vibrational energy, but it's a perspective. It's a being. It's a you. It's a you. It's a you. In other words, you see, we want you to acknowledge that Abraham, who is addressing you,
yes,
is beyond Esther, who you are seeing. We want you to feel the reality of that which is us, beyond the physical persona, which is Esther.
Okay.
And we want you to realize that you is always there. In other words, so here's Esther, Abraham pouring through her, the eyes of source addressing you, the mouth of source addressing you. In other words, so if you can let this is a perfect blending. But the non-physical part, it is important to acknowledge the non-physical part of this. It is important to notice that greater part of you before you can begin to notice when you're allowing it and notice when you're not, you see.
Okay. When we make a transition or croak, we go back to source, and because this world shows us such separation, so sometimes it's hard to get your...
Well, you could say this world shows us, or you could say I've trained myself to see.
Okay.
Because it's almost the same sentence, except when you say the world shows us, you feel no control. When you say I've trained myself to see, now you have control.
So how do I untrain?
And really, the big thing that you're working toward here is the difference between source and who you might be in your physical form is that source does not allow the world to show it the unwanted parts. In other words, that's the thing that your inner being really has to offer you. Your inner being, or Abraham, or your source, you will never be able to drag them out of the vortex to have that negative conversation or perspective with you, you see. And we don't want you to feel uncomfortable when you are out there because the world has shown you something. We just want, when the world shows you something, for you to recognize the world showed it to me because it was in my vibrational vicinity, and I can train myself in a way that will no longer be in my vibrational vicinity, and then the world will not be able to show that to me again. In other words, do you get in your car and the radio just has its way with you? You're going to listen to this today? You can push those buttons, you can twist those dials, but this is what you're going to hear. This is what I, the radio world, seek to show you today. It's not that way. You have a tuner. You have control over the frequency that you tune into. And you have control over the frequency of what the world shows to you, because you're choosing what it shows to you by your frequency, whether you do it deliberately or by default. You're choosing it.
Okay. When we make our transition and we go back to oneness, we merge into a wholeness and keep our identity at the same time?
Well, that's really interesting, because it's easy for you. We're going to answer your question, but you've given us something so wonderful in relationship to what you were asking before that we want to go there. It's easier for you to accept the oneness through croaking than it is the oneness through focus. In other words, seeing the world through the eyes of source is oneness too. Croaking is oneness. Seeing the world through the eyes of source is oneness. It is easier to croak than to tune yourself into the frequency of source. In other words, there are buses out there right now. Run right over you and off you go. But don't you find that fascinating about your own perspective, that you can see the oneness through croaking? You can accept that, and we want you to see the oneness, or to feel the oneness, through alignment. So now continue your question, because you were headed somewhere before we derailed it a little bit.
Well, no, it's just that I can see
you want to know.
Do we keep our individual? What the thing is, me, Doug.
But here's the thing, Doug.
Okay.
Why would you want to? We've been talking about how you want to see the world through the eyes of Source. So it's Doug Source. Source Doug. In other words, it's more than just Doug looking at this world. It's Source. So the more while you're in your physical body, that you allow the alignment of who you really are to help you to become this source energy being that you are. When you reemerge into non-physical, you will recognize yourself completely as who you are. When any of you reemerge into non-physical, you'll leave behind all that negative part of the spectrum. You'll leave behind all doubt and fear and worry, all degradation, all not liking yourself and others. You'll leave all of that behind, you see. And so for many people, when you first reemerge into non-physical, you hardly recognize yourself because you're so happy. But in time, it's like as Esther is allowing us to flow through her, she does not feel the separation. She feels the moreness of this alignment.
Okay.
And that's what you feel when you reemerge. You don't feel lost. You don't go into a nebulous soup or mist. You don't lose your ability to focus. You become all that you've become fully, and you don't look back ever in regret, you see, or in wonder. You're not roaming around heaven saying, I can't find Doug. I can't find Doug. What you're saying instead is, I now see the world through the eyes of Source, which is what I, Doug, was doing all the time. It's what I always wanted. And now here I've got it, you see. We just don't think you should have to croak to have it.
I agree.
Good time for a segment of refreshment.
Thank you so much.